The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of Paranormal Buzz Radio or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is strictly prohibited. For information on everything Paranormal Buzz Radio has to offer, visit our website, paranormalbuzzradio.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Russell. Welcome to the Healing Light Podcast. I am a psychic intuitive who's been reading tarot cards for over 25 years. I'm also Reiki certified. Join me as I read cards, share intuitive messages, promote healing, and much, much more.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Healing Light Podcast. I am your host, Caitlin Russell. We have a wonderful guest joining us tonight. Before I get to Barbara With and her amazing story, I can't wait to interview her. I wanted to thank all of you for a successful season 1. It was a lot of fun. I had a lot of interesting topics, a lot of great guests. And it was all such a whirlwind. I can't believe that we're on to season 2. As always, I welcome your input. So if you have a show idea, a guest you'd like me to talk to, feel free to send me a message on Instagram or Facebook. As always, you can follow me on Facebook, The Healing Light NH, Instagram, The Healing Light NH. And you can also send me an email, the Healing Light 1, that's the Healing Light number 1, at gmail.com. And I want to thank Allison and Shay's Paranormal and Paranormal Buzz Radio, as always. They are our hosts, and they do a great job. So thank you very much. So when I was thinking about my season 2, I wanted to really amp up my guest list. I want to get, intriguing topics, things that I've been curious about that I know you will too. And I was just brewing with all these ideas. And then I came across Barbara, and we'll get to her background in a second. But I said, I knew I had to have her on, and I knew I had to make her my season 2 premiere because this is big. So I'm very excited. So let's get to it. So Barbara, thank you so much for joining the Healing Light Podcast. Really appreciate it. How are you?
Oh, hi, Caitlin. Thanks so much for having me. I'm great. I'm just great. I'm anxious to chat.
Yes, absolutely. So when I was doing a little bit of research on you, your biography, I can't believe this. I don't know how you do it all. Peace activist, award-winning author, psychic channel to Albert Einstein, publisher, performer, workshop facilitator, and inspirational speaker. And you also wrote 6 books on metaphysics, which is another topic which I don't know a lot about metaphysics, but it always has intrigued me. So I'm very excited about that. So, what the first thing that grabbed me that I have to know, because you're a psychic, I'm a psychic, but I've heard this many, many years ago, and I've seen documentaries on people who do this, is you do something called channeling. So can you tell me, as a psychic, what's the difference between like a psychic medium like me, who receives messages from spirit, and someone who channels, or can you do both, or what is that all about?
Well, I think you can do both, but I also think that there is a difference. So for me, channeling, I like to describe as against my music, because I began playing the piano when I was very, very young. I taught myself And I was writing songs by the time I was 12 or 13. And that to me is channeling, where I would go into what I called outer space and I would listen for the song. And then I would translate it and bring it back to the piano and put the words and all that to it. So that is kind of what channeling does. My impression, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, about you receiving messages about people, it's channeling. You're listening for the message. But I think it's that I like to call it intuitive arts. Because those of us who are musicians or artists, we're in that same zone as you who are a psychic. It's that intuitive level of communication and taking in information. So, yeah, I think you can be both.
All right, interesting. So, yeah, that kind of makes sense to me, because when I am in a session and I'm in that deep state of listening and connecting with spirit, I do go into a completely different zone, and it's just everything else around me disappears, and I'm totally focused on what the messages are.
And you're listening, right? You're listening.
I'm absolutely listening to, concentrating and listening. And so that's a different way to look at it. Now, before we get into Albert Einstein, so when we think about channeling, what kind of, like when you're sitting with someone, you're channeling, or wherever you are, maybe you're a public speaker and you're speaking to someone, what sort of experience is that like? Do you change your voice? Do you change your tone? Or how does that all work?
If you were to see me do my public speaking and my inspirational speaking that I do, there's a much more kind of human, stumbly side of it. I'm okay with it. I'm a really good public speaker, but I still stumble around and don't. Mm-hmm. When you hear the channeling, there's first of all, there's a heightened awareness of what I think is our bodies that resonate with the truth. So it isn't even intellectualizing so much as there's this feeling about it. But then the way that the words are put together and the flow of it just blows me away to have it be so exacting. But I started out, my very first group channel that I did in 1993. In fact, it's 30-year anniversary coming up, December 14th of our first group channel. My channeling voice had a very heavy accent, and it took me a while to put the pieces together. Well, it was over a long period of time that all the pieces fell together, but it like a Yiddish accent. And we used to joke because my associates and I would try to duplicate it when I wasn't channeling, and I could never do it.
Oh.
So, but now
incredible. People
say now that there's there's kind of a seamless flow from when I start, okay, let's take some deep breaths, and that my voice doesn't, you can hear changes in it.
Okay. All right, definitely. So it sounds like it's you embody what you're channeling, if I've got that right. Okay. So I have to know about Albert Einstein. Why Albert Einstein? How did this all come about, and what happens when you're channeling?
Well, how it all came about was that I had a mentor in high school, Eunice McCoy, and she channeled. And she was just an antenna. That's all she said she was. She would go into outer space and she wouldn't remember anything, but she was picking up my higher power. And so when I started doing groups, I was okay. Actually, when I started to channel, that's how I thought of myself, as just an antenna. There wasn't angels or dead people or anything. So when I started doing groups, my two associates, Kim and Teresa, the psychic sorority, we called ourselves, they asked, "Who are you?" And the answer was, "You can call us angels." And I wasn't comfortable with that, but we decided that because the information was so high level, and it was changing our lives in the way that we never anticipated. I didn't know what to expect when I said, "Hey, I'd like to channel for a group. What would these voices say?" I had no preconceived idea. And so when these voices started saying they were angels and that they were here for a very specific mission, that they had this revolutionary way that they were developing for humanity to resolve conflict first within the self, that was also a pathway to world peace. And it was so revolutionary, but they needed human beings and conflict to test it on. And the three of us apparently had volunteered and were chosen to do this. And so that's how the whole group started. And then the angels came. And once we published our first book, Diaries of a Psychic Sorority, which is the true story of how this all started and all the transcripts from the original channeling, I was contacted by a tabloid in London, like a paranormal tabloid from London in 1990. This is 1998, wanting an interview with Princess Di from Beyond the Grave. And wow. I had never done any such thing. The dead people had been coming to me since this whole opening was coming on, and plus a tabloid. But I did it. I channeled it. I typed the questions and the answers and then printed it and read it. And they flew me out to New York and spent 5 hours with me, interviewing me. But they didn't want it.
Wow.
And so my agent and I sat down and said, well, let's make a list of other dead people who might want to. So we made this long list, and some of them didn't. Elvis didn't. He was getting in too much trouble. But so the next one up was Nicole Brown Simpson. And that was a totally mind-blowing thing, a channel to do. And I believe that one I spoke and we recorded and transcribed. So I sort of embodied her. And by the time we got to John Kennedy, who told us pretty much what we're finding out now in this day and age of what really happened to him, he told us, don't worry, we're going to tell you who will be next, because we're writing a book, and so we'll tell you who's going to be up. And then the next one was Jackie, and she did this whole thing on publishing. And then Albert Einstein. And we didn't even have him on the original list. I was not like any big Albert Einstein fan. I dropped out of physics and math to opt for music and wanted to be a rock star. I mean, that was my deal. I wasn't planning to be any kind of spiritual leader. But when he came up and I channeled him, I spoke, this is the voice. This is the Yiddish accent. This is even my very first automatic writing that I did in 1987. And when I said, who are you? And they said, we are sound. Back then, sound. And I thought, fine, I've been writing songs now all these years. I mean, sure, sound. But that was Albert Einstein in there. And I think even back to the music that I did at such an early age, I just knew and felt like I knew him. And then I decided to do a book just for him. First, I put out Party of 12, the Afterlife interviews, which with his interview and the others. And then I did one just for him.
Oh, so, it just, to me, it sounds like, I think I get this too. When you tune in to the universe, to the vibrations, I always call that we vibrate at a high level. That it helps you connect. So I'm wondering if he was seeking someone, and then you come along with your talents and what you do, and then makes that connection. I'm just wondering if that would be something that would be the case, but I don't know. I just think that, yeah, maybe.
I've asked myself that because he died. I was born in February 7th, 1955. And he died in April of 1955. And his last paper, his last manifesto that he wrote before he died with Bertrand Russell was read on July 9th, 1955 in London. And it was a plea to world governments to resolve conflicts peacefully because World War III would be the end of us.
Wow.
So I think he died with a huge, huge emotional attachment to not just world peace, considering what he did in his life, but to articulate a unified field theory, because he couldn't do that in life. He didn't do it. So I think he took that energy with him. And from what I believe about going into afterlife, whatever we're emotionally focused on and holding on to when we pass, we take that, which is why we have so many reoccurring lives with the same people come up, because we attach to them. So he was highly motivated.
Wow. So talk about Einstein and the party, and how is that all tied together to what you do?
Well, when Einstein and the party revealed themselves that year in 1998, and in 1 month I had 12 interviews with these 12 souls in afterlife who were saying they were working for world peace. And at the end of Party of 12, it's called the Manifesto of the Destiny of Peace, and it's their commitment that no matter how many lifetimes it takes, we're going to create a world that's based on a compassionate infrastructure, what we're kind of going through now. So that's been their mission. And it's just that party seems to have grown and grown and grown and grown and grown. And now it's quite a party. It is a party.
Absolutely. So, in the times that we're living in, that some pretty terrible stuff is going on in the world, in the news. There's a lot of pain and suffering, and that I say it every year that one of my wishes is world peace. That's I think that resonates with a lot of people. So that is a pretty powerful message, and the fact that essentially they connect with you and chose you, that makes it almost like one of your missions in life, if I'm understanding correctly, is for conflict resolution and world peace. Because if you can't accomplish it in life, then, you're right. It does make sense that you kind of carry that on with you, and then you can pass it on, which also makes a lot of sense, because that's kind of like the messages, that they wanted to get out what they couldn't get out when they were living, and I really believe that when they cross over, that they do want to finish, what they need to get out in the world. Just basically how I feel that works. So it makes a whole lot of sense. So, yeah.
Well, and you have to understand, this was 1993. 1993 was probably one of the last pivotal times in our, at least U.S. history, where we weren't off, creating 9 new wars, and there was kind of an economic prosperity, and world peace was not a big deal in 1993. But they, from the very beginning, said, we're here to create a process, step-by-step instructions for one person at a time, each individual. And that learning that we did, the psychic sorority did, and kind of worked there, we tested their process, and not only did it work, but it worked miraculously. And so we created Conflict Revolution, not only because it's revolutionary, it's not resolution, it is an inner resolution, but it's really about revolving the focus back to self and using these, we call them the maps of human consciousness that Einstein has laid out in his unified field theory as to why this works, as within, so without, right? And this gravitational wave that is our energy is perfectly projected into the lens. Whatever is on that gravitational wave that's flowing up from the center of the earth and has all of our mathematics on it, it's going to perfectly project into the lens of the physical world. And that's why we can have wars, and it's still a perfectly operating system, because what Einstein is proposing is that there's these 3 human dimensions on this wave. And if we learn how to align them to compassion, which he gives us a scientific, quantifiable definition of compassion, then we naturally manifest peace in the lens. It's not something we have to go into the lens and manipulate people to find peace. We do it here first in this kind of radical self-responsibility way, and this revolutionary new way of putting together psychology and the psyche. And it will change what happens around us. And it certainly works on the microcosm. So now that I'm on my world peace tour, inspiring people to have this conversation and to understand that regardless of if you use conflict revolution or you use your own process of turning inward and finding that peace within you, we have to know that it has an impact on the global level as well, the macrocosm as well. We can't discount the work that we do to find inner peace and its effect on the macrocosm.
Yeah, that's pretty profound to me, because in essence, if we all hold this power inside, because I think a lot of people feel powerless and helpless to do anything. People need something to hope for, people need something to look forward to. And if we can channel that, speaking of channeling, then we all can be a change for this. And I think, I don't know if people in our busy lives and all the stuff that we have going on can really think that they can make an effective change. And what you're saying and what the Hardy and Albert Einstein are saying is that, yes, you absolutely can. And it has a ripple effect down the line to other people. Absolutely. That gives me hope.
Well, and I just had a client who, he came to me and he was like, literally, he's like, I know this is going to turn around, but I am in the darkest night of my soul. My wife, who I'm divorcing, is trying to just destroy me. And he went through the whole rhetoric of the lawyers and the this and everything that's going on the outside. And when we were done, he was so relieved, because he learned what was his domain, what did he have, what he could do, because he wanted to do more. And he can't. Sometimes you just can't. You can't call another lawyer. You can't do another thing. But if you're in that place, now he has a process for when he is standing in line at the supermarket, right? And it's not a time where you're dealing with your kids or you're speaking in front of the school board or you're making decisions. You're just in those in between times. Now he has a completely new focus. Now he has a step-by-step instructions for when that trigger comes up, that emotional trigger. He has a completely different way that he's going to deal with it than let it marry to thoughts of his ex-wife and project stuff out on her. Now he has a whole new revolutionary way to deal with it while he's standing in line at the supermarket. And he, just by the end of the whole reading, he was really, really enlightened and excited for the first time in a long time. And people need hope, man. And they need to know these simple things that they can do. You don't have to wait for everybody. It's not the conflict resolution isn't a process where you have to have the person sit down and negotiate. You can do it anytime. And it makes a huge difference, I think. I know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that I'm so happy that you were able to give him that hope. Because like you said, I said it earlier that we all need hope. We all need to believe. And I've said this to people I know and who are struggling too. It gets better. It really does. It does get better. Honest. I know you don't believe it, but right now, it does. We are going to survive this world. So when we're talking about scientific world and metaphysics, I was wondering, as science and channeling psychics kind of you wouldn't think really meshes with this. And I know that Neil deGrasse Tyson said that, and he's a world-renowned scientist as well, that he said that as a scientist, that he would want evidence because that's what that's what he bases it on. And he doesn't discount religion. He doesn't discount psychics or anything like that, but he wants to receive evidence. So when you are working with the scientific field, like what are your impressions if you've had any with them in what you do?
I have had I wouldn't say a whole lot of input from scientists, but I have had enough from the amateur physicists, the physics teachers, who have been astounded by it. The one event that I attended that I like to share about this I was booked into it was called a metaphysical meetup. If you know Meetup, you meet up online, but you actually have live events that you go to. So I walked into this meetup, metaphysical. I'm thinking woo-woo, right? Talking with angels and stuff. No. They were amateur chemists, amateur physicists, and they were actually having conversations about what the latest scientific journals were saying. And so I was getting very nervous about this. Like, okay. And finally somebody in the back yelled, can we hear Barbara speak? And I got up and I said, okay, here's the deal. I am not a scientist. I'm not a chemist. I'm not anything like that. I talk to dead people, and I think I talked to Albert Einstein. And this is his unified field theory that he's delivered to me from afterlife. And I'm not here to convince you of this, but I would like for you to see this and then tell me what you think, because I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I just did this. I channeled and then I listened and then we put it all together. But it seems to make a lot of sense. And afterwards, every single one of them had lost their minds. The physicist was like, you've taken the 0-point gravity field theory and you've married it with the blah, 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 and you're having the other thing. And that's what you did, right? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but maybe. And so as I've traveled the world and for many years, I would mostly work in Europe several times a winter. And I would do my workshops and I would draw the whole thing from nothing to everything, the whole unified field theory. And on the breaks, everyone would just stand there. We would just stand there like it was some big Mandela. And people would say, oh, where's this? Where's Rainbow Bridge? Or, where's whatever. We could put everything on these maps. And so right now, I'm on my peace tour. I'm seeking out particular people who I think it will have that kind of shifty aha effect. And I would love to show Neil deGrasse Tyson. I would love to show it to him because that's what I would say to him. I've just come to believe that it's Einstein because it's so brilliant, and it's over 30 years, and it's gradual. It wasn't like I decided I was going to, channel Albert Einstein one day out of the blue. It has this long history and lots of witnesses and things that I couldn't have manipulated to make come about. So please tell me what you think it is, Neil.
You would probably stump him on that.
I think he'd have the same reaction that everyone else does when I was just on another podcast earlier today, and she was just like, boing, boing, boing. Oh my God, it's just so Einsteinian. It really is. So brilliant. Yeah. I'd like to think it's me, but I don't think partly.
Well, yeah, that's amazing. So, because I was reading about, about metaphysics and all that. So how does that all relate? I mean, because I've kind of dipped my toes in that as a healer, especially with Reiki. You talk a lot about, metaphysics and stuff and vibrational and all that stuff and connecting with the other side. So, are you able to speak to that about how that relates or?
Well, it is the field in which the work is classified, I think, because it's speculative. In fact, one scientist, I think it was Brian Greene, came up with this theory very recently that the origins of the universe are really a black hole. And it fits right in with everything that we've been saying for all these years. We've been doing Einstein stuff. But the debunking of it was, not debunking, but the challenge of it was, you'll never be able to prove it. So that's the thing about metaphysics is I think it's just like this a kind of imaginative science that Einstein probably had a hand in. I don't know if he would have called it metaphysics, but that's what thought experiments are. Okay. He imagined himself riding a wave of light. Now, he could never prove it. He could never ride a wave of light that way. But by doing that, it triggered his imagination then to channel the mathematics that then the scientists could. And isn't that what science is, though? I mean, it's always evolving. He changed 270 years of Newtonian science when he did E equals MC squared, and everything changed forever. So that's what I feel this information that's come through me is. It's going to change the way psychology deals with things. And here's this thing is, the worldview that we hold is not that we're wounded and not that we need healing. It's that there's a certain way that our operating system runs most regeneratively and to maximize capacity. And if we don't operate our system that way, then it looks like we're wounded. So, for example, in our system, emotion, we want the whole everything. We want everything. We want from the lowest to the highest. We want the unified field of emotion to move through our bodies with our breath, but not attached to any thinking process that could be projected outside. Like you have anger, it comes into your thought processes, and then you think about your sister-in-law who doesn't respect you or whatever, and you project that out. So there's a whole different way that emotion is processed that stops that projection. And when you practice it as a rule, like just as a rule, you end up not projecting on anybody. And when you project, when you do let those projections come up, we're projecting on everybody. We hardly even know like who's who when we're doing that. So there's different ways of handling our what we call 3 human dimensions that we work with that revolutionize how healing takes place.
Wow, interesting. A lot to think about. So with your workshops and classes regarding conflict resolution.
Revolution.
Resolution.
No, it's all right.
Whoa. So if you could talk about those and what the impact that those have on when you're on your students and how that all works. Love to hear that.
Yes. So I begin and I present the whole unified field theories, the maps of human consciousness, how it all works, how the system works, and the whole thing. And then everybody brings their conflict. And of course I bring a conflict which I know the miraculous ending to, but that doesn't prevent me from using my dramatic skills to accentuate how bad it was in the beginning. And then we set about to break out these conflicts into the 3 human dimensions that we learn about: emotion, intuition, and intellect. And so emotion, solar plexus; intuition, heart; intellect, head. And they have very specific definitions for this modality. And so emotion is it's this primordial soup of creation. It's what's at the root of everything. Even the chair, the bed, everything in the physical world at its roots. Because this is all coming from within us, right? Everything, the world starts within us. So it's all in there. And then it moves and it becomes the sound, the voice of compassion, because compassion has been identified as the 5th fundamental force of the universe. It's kind of the God force. And we can get into that too. But inside us, intuition is the voice of compassion within us, and it's carried on emotion. So intuition is the impelling voice telling us the next most advantageous step for the good of the whole. So intuition becomes a natural function of every human being, that it's impelling us, like our heart to beat, telling us to breathe, and then impelling us to turn left or call our mother, or it's but then the third is intellect, the 3rd human dimension. And that's where all the descriptions come about. So there is a level of our thinking that we don't hear. We call it the subatomic level, that is saying, that is a chair, that is a chair, that is a chair, that is a chair, that is a chair. And it's part of what creates the very human experience where we're separate, right? We're separate from the chair and we're separate from each other. So intellect is so important in the creation of this universe, but it's also where free will exists. So intuition can be impelling you to take this step that's going to be good for the whole, and because it's the voice of compassion that knows that. But intellect has the power to say, no, we've all done it. You know it. Intuition is telling you to rest, right? You get that message. Oh, you just rest. Your body wants to rest. I can't rest. I've got 100 million things to do. And then we make a decision. And Einstein says this is the root of all conflicts of the world. This is the root of all the wars, everything that we're experiencing. Because if humans lived where intuition was impelling, and intellect was trained not to be the thing that's trying to control and manipulate and figure out, but to reduce that fluctuation of our thinking so we can be in that present moment, listening for what intuition wants us to do, and then doing it. That is what is aligned to compassion. That is our natural way that would then manifest. We'd be making decisions for the good of the whole, starting with ourselves. So intellect would not have control of the whole ship. It would be working with intuition, and our breath work with our emotion. And from that, this is the theory. This is the why we're calling for the participation of the willing to do this worldwide nonviolent action to end the age of war. This is how we're doing it. This small, intricate inner change is the theory that if we do this, if enough of us do this, we will change the manifestation of what's happening around us.
My mind is absolutely blown right now. That is amazing.
Isn't it just Einsteinian?
It absolutely is. Wow. Yeah, that just, like I said, we all need something to look forward to and believe in. And, that's, if we could, not if, when we do this, then our whole world can change. The whole world focus can change. Music. So,
well, and let me just say one quick thing about that is that because we've been doing it in the microcosm, like I've been doing, all of us who practice this, I do it in my own life. I see the miracles every single day. I've seen the miracles through my whole life of practicing this. So I'm addicted to it. That's why I can be so joyful, because I see what it does for my life. Certainly, it must then work on the macrocosm. That's all I can think of. But in the meantime, you're doing your own life. You're thriving more. You're healthier.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I am definitely going to be tuning in to that more and, sharing that with the world. You inspired me, so.
Yes, good. Good. I've done my job.
You have, absolutely. Yeah, our listeners are going to love this. So when you think about what comes next, because to me, when I was reading your biography, I've just done a lot. What comes next for you? What goals do you have, or what are your plans that people who follow you might want to be interested? What would they be interested in knowing?
Well, my plans are that since 2011, I've been on a different path. I've been I became a journalist, and I founded a media co-op, the Wisconsin Citizens Media Cooperative, and I've been doing investigative journalism and also other different revenue streams. I've been the business manager of the La Pointe Center for the Arts. I live on a small island in northern Wisconsin. And so the plan has been that I've ended all of my other revenue streams and focused everything on bringing together the whole library, diaries. And my associate also has a book called Second Coming, Awakening the Christ Within. And I've gone on, starting on July 9th, I started my peace tour, my world peace tour. And my intention is to bring this information out into the world that we can, A, start talking about it, B, giving people hope, and giving them, even if you don't go off and practice conflict resolution, you're not going to forget this. You can't unsee it. It just resonates so much, and it gives people so much sort of instant hope. And also to network like this is so important, not just for us and all these amazing people on podcasts right now. I do 3-4 podcasts a week, and everybody's talking and everybody's getting it. Everybody wants to talk about it. They want to know what to do for peace. But also, I'm leaving in July, at the end of January, for the UK. I'm spending two months in Europe, and it's the same thing. I've I'm going to travel around mostly the UK, but I'm going to jump over to France for a few weeks. And then I've got some other places I might try to find some scientists and some psychologists that I want to go see. But it's about having these conversations, connecting in person, especially after the last 3-4 years where we've been so separated from each other. And oddly enough, I was just on a podcast with Jack and Deborah it's called the Aetherius Society. And it's in the UK. Well, it's all over the world, but there's UK headquarters. And the guy who started it was named George King. And in 1954, he got the message that he was going to be channeling some group of extraterrestrials, he called it, who were basically working in the afterlife for world peace. And they have this huge society all around the world and George King worked with Einstein in real life. And July 8th and 9th is the biggest holiday of the Aetherius Society because of something that happened. So I'm on this podcast. I'm on my way to England. They're in England. There's a whole network of them all over the country. So it's just like step by step, this synchronicity is falling in my lap, and I'm following it. And I just, I have to say, my dream is that Einstein wins a Nobel Peace Prize posthumously. That would be just the epitome of my life's work. But this is what if I'm lucky, where's the wood to knock on? My mom lived to be 95. My dad lived to be 97. I've got couple more decades ahead. So I'm all in.
All right. Awesome. So if people want to, we need to find your books, sign up for your workshops, and see you. How do they find you?
I've got 2 websites. One is Barbara With, BARBARAWITH, with like the preposition, barbarawith.com. And I've got a reading sale going on right now too. And all of my books and all the podcasts and everything else is on synergyalliance.llc. And I'm sure you can drop these in your info for your folks. Mm-hmm. And you can sign up and get notices. I'm creating events as I go. It's been very exciting that way. They're forming on their own. So you can keep up to date with where I'm going and look at all the books. It's really a fascinating story. I hope people look into it.
Right, absolutely. Oh, I'm writing all this down. Oh, absolutely. This stuff just thrills me and really excites me. So thank you very much. So people who are listening, I want you to follow Barbara and buy her books, and maybe sign up for a workshop and look for her around the world, because big things are coming her way, and ours as well. And our world is going to be a better place because of people like you, Barbara. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
The Healing Light podcast. And I really appreciate you spending your time with me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. You have a good night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.